Favorite players from the Northern Hemisphere, folks. Mainly thinking about the Six nations, and I'm mainly thinking about players who are now long retired that I would have watched as a much younger man. And, were my favorites from each of these Six Nations countries. I'll try to think of any that I had a kind of particular dislike for, but I feel like because the All Blacks didn't play these teams that often, I didn't have enough chance to kind of really build up any animosity towards any of these teams, at least as a youngster. From France, and this maybe speaks to me, for some reason, liking little quick wingers. But Christophe Dominici, he was electric. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago now, but he was always a really fun one to watch. And from a favourite Welshman, it's also Shane Williams. So maybe I currently quite like Darcy Graham on the Scottish wing as well. So I just seem to have a thing for kind of diminutive. I quite like Cheslin Colby. He's a likeable chap for the box. Diminutive, quick wingers. There's just something about them. I mean, there's obviously a spot for the kind of John Olomu big unit, quick style wingers as well. But man, Dominici and Shane Williams were both absolutely electric for their countries. I probably preferred Shane Williams over Dominici, but I'm not sure if I had just more exposure to him because I would have followed Welsh rugby a bit more than I would have the French. But there you go. Both of those guys pretty bloody good. The Irish answer, sadly, is nothing too flash, but everybody liked watching Brian O'Driscoll play. He was just glorious to watch. Every now and again see some post saying, well, he wasn't as great as we think he was and blah, blah, blah. He's a pretty bloody good player. Pretty bloody good player. I felt sorry for him after that 2012 game in Christchurch where the All Blacks only just managed to win. The Irish came so close to their first ever victory over the All Blacks in that game, and that was in New Zealand. Yeah, I felt so sorry for him in the post-match, and then the next week they got pumped by 60. I think he had to do the post-match for that one as well. So, yeah, good player. What can I say? Do you remember playing him in Rugby 08? He was almost unstoppable. The backs themes continues, actually. For England, Jason Robinson, he's another one that's kind of a relatively diminutive, quick winger, amazing footwork. He was an excitement machine. It was a kind of weird one in 2003 as to whether you were supporting England or Australia, because for a New Zealander, you didn't really want either of those teams to win. But personally, I will admit, I was hoping England would win, because at that point, New Zealand had won one Rugby World Cup, Australia had won 2 Rugby World Cups, and I didn't want them to get a third, because we were only on 1. I wanted us to kind of catch up. So at least if England got 1, that meant our road to catching up to the Australians was not as long. So there you go. Jason Robinson was a great player. It's all backs for Scotland. And I got to speak to him during the Six Nations just gone. Chris Patterson. I mean, he had that comical moment, I think it was in 2011, where the ball fell off the tee right as he was about to kick it and it went under the posts. But Chris Patterson, he's a goal kicker. He ran the back line sometimes in the outside back. So, yeah, versatile, bit of gas, setting up tries. Chris Patterson was certainly a fun one to watch, and he was a nice guy to talk to as well. And then in Italian, I finally get the forward. I don't think it's going to be a particularly unique pick as well, but Martin Castrogiovanni for that big Italian front row back in the day. It was one of their strengths. Remember when Italy had a pretty average side, but they had Sergio playing for them as well, who was a pretty decent player. And Martin Castrogiovanni propping the scrum was a big old unit, and he big bushy guy as well. So you could also say Adam Jones for Wales as well in that department, because he was similarly a big, noticeable guy. With the teams you don't get to see that often, it's often the ones that stand out that you kind of remember. In terms of guys that I didn't like, I remember always wanting Johnny Wilkinson to miss and being always pissed off when he would get the kicks. That I remember. So Johnny Wilkinson probably wasn't a favourite because he was very good at goal kicking. And for the other teams, I think the media tried to kind of portray Sebastian Chabal for a while as a bit of like a pantomime villain, but he's just an opposition hard-hitting loose forward, so nothing really wrong with that. But yeah, I don't remember any of the other teams being particularly villainous or having characters that I particularly disliked. But there you go. Guys, I think who are mostly probably all 4 or 5 years older than me. Some of them maybe a little bit more. Those are the kind of guys that you watch, when you're a teenager and they're already coming onto the scene, and you kind of look up to them as that kind of generation, but all very much long retired now. But anyway, you guys let us know your thoughts. Who are the guys that you admired from some of the other teams than your own, or potentially your own if they're one of the ones on the board, and any guys you particularly disliked? I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.